Greg King is the Royal Flying Doctor's longest-serving remote pilot in Queensland, flying over 1.6 million nautical miles during his time with the service. That's the equivalent of 4 return trips to the moon. Now, though, after close to 20 years in Mount Isa, he's hanging up his wings and heading out of town. This is the Royal Flying Doctor Service Queensland Section podcast. I'm Edwina Stott, and today you'll hear a little from Greg about his time with the service. I caught up with him as he and his wife Jane were heading into Mount Isa to meet up with the RFDS team for a little farewell dinner. I began by asking him what it was that first brought him and his family into town and into the service.
Well, I was a midlife crisis pilot, so I've been a farmer and I've had my own business. My wife and I are farmers and had our own business, but I had 9.5 years as a flying instructor and then nearly 2 years, or Jane says 22 months, 3 weeks, 5 days, 4 hours and so many minutes working, flying in and out of Lady Elliot Island from Harvey Bay. Then we got the job at Mount Isa.
And what was it like going from flying commercially to then flying for the Royal Flying Doctors?
Fantastic. Because everybody is pleased to see you no matter where you go. I suppose the people I used to take out to Lady Elliot Island, all the tourists and all that, they're pleased to see you, but it's fantastic.
Greg remembers one particular time when he was working with a pilot called Darryl. He was new to the RFDS, but had about 26,000 hours worth of experience flying commercially. Greg says it was a real change for Darryl though. But the biggest difference wasn't in the flying, it was in the passengers.
And the very first day we're transporting a fellow an old gentleman out of Normanton back to Mount Isa. I got up front and I said, right, let's go, let's start up. And I said, this gentleman will thank you when we get back to Mount Isa. And on cue, as the gentleman's coming down the ramp, he puts up his hand and he taps Darryl on the arm and he says, thank you, Sonny. And Darryl looked at me later and he said, you set him up for that? And I said, no, that will happen just about every time. But if they are awake, they will thank you. He said, I've been flying all my life. And that's really the first time I've been genuinely thanked.
And Greg says that the gratitude of the patients wasn't the only pleasant surprise which came from working in such a remote place.
I was warned, actually, before I went to Mount Isa, the dive master at Lady Elliot Island, I said, I'm going to Mount Isa just before I left there. I'm resigning. I'm off to the RFDS, off to Mount Isa. He said, be careful. He said, I went there as a 20-year-old. I was only staying 2 years. I left. He said, I went there as a single. I left when my son joined the army. You'll go to Mount Isa and stay 20. I said, that won't happen to us. Mount Isa is a good place to raise a family. There's everything you want there. We were very happy in Mount Isa, and the job was everything I could have wished for. Other pilots that have moved from Mount Isa and gone to the other bases always say they regret their move as far as the flying is concerned, because Mount Isa offers the best flying.
What would you say was the most challenging part of the job?
Oh, the night work's the most challenging part, because I always used to say night flying when I was training people for night was 50% harder than day flying. But no, night flying is 100% harder because your body just doesn't want to be there. So you're coming back from Townsville. You leave Townsville at 2 o'clock in the morning. You haven't got a patient on board. The doctor and the nurse sleep, and as a pilot, you've got to stay there and you're fighting the circadian rhythm and everything else. So the night work is the most challenging. And of course, out here in the rainy season, when you've got thunderstorms and everything else that you've got to put up with, the night work, daytime you can see the storms. At night you can only see the lightning. You can't see the clouds or anything like that. So the night work is the most challenging.
So throughout your 20 years as a pilot for the Royal Flying Doctor Service, dealing with some of the most difficult conditions that a pilot can face, what have you learned?
There's an old saying in aviation, you think when you've got 100 hours, you think you know it all. By the time you've got 1,000 hours, you're sure. By the time you get to 10,000 hours, you realise you're just beginning to learn how dangerous you've been. So the more you know, the more there is to learn.
And tell me, what do you think you'll miss most about not flying for the RFDS?
the aeroplane, that wonderful King Air. I'll miss the aeroplane. I'll miss the crew. I'll miss the people that I worked with. The job all round. It was for me my absolute dream job. And it was something that from the very first time I got into an aeroplane and I started working at Sunshine Coast Air Charter, I had a picture of a King Air at my desk where I was a flying instructor, and I said to the fellow that employed me that I always wanted to work for the RFDS. It is the epitome of aviation. The RFDS gives you the opportunity to help people in their time of need. As a pilot, in the bush, you actually help. You're part of the crew. You're holding stuff. You're making sure that the patient is secure. You're working with the nurse and the doctor. You're an integral part of that whole situation. You're not just a pilot. Flying is only 50% of the job out here at Mount Isa. The rest is being part of that very well-oiled piece of machinery, the crew of the RFDS.
And what would you say to somebody if they were thinking of joining the RFDS either as a pilot or in any other role? What would you say to them if they were thinking of doing that?
Aim for it, grab it with both hands and hang on. It's the best ride you'll ever have.
That was Greg King, RFDS Queensland Section's longest serving remote pilot. If you'd like to see some brilliant photos and video from Greg's time with the RFDS, head to our Facebook page or the website. Just Google RFDS Queensland and hit the podcast tab. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. That way others can find us too. I'm Edwina Stott. Catch you next time.